Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. This video is about the parable of the races. Now, it's a parable I'm going to do off the top of my head. The core ideas are important. The exact way I'm telling this is not so important. The story itself, outside of the core morals, is not important because I'm just making it up right now. So there was once a planet, Earth, and there was different races. And if there's a race that I'm not naming, whatever the race is that's the most like it, some to that effect, or use the same formula, you'll see their mistake as well. So you had Asians, you have white people, you have black people, you have Hispanics, okay, you have Islanders, you have Semites, what have you. And all of them, as races, okay, so I'm an individual, my parents are individuals, as races, as groups, are doing the wrong thing on a spectrum. Okay, if one person raped and killed all your kids after another person before had just sexually assaulted one of them, okay, are they guilty of the same degree of treachery? No. And we have to assign guilt accordingly. So the white Jew and LGBT people were the most guilty. The Asians and the Semites are very much, bent on conquest as groups. And of course there's a spectrum and so on and so forth of the individuals. And that's like the geopolitical world. And there's some black people who have various positions of power, but they're not that much power. They don't have much power as the leader of China or North Korea, Japan, what have you. Which goes back to the parable of the 10 minas, right? To the one who much is given, much is expected, what have you. So when Christ returns, the races send him representatives to California, perhaps the most significant political center on the planet. It's not Washington, it's not London, okay? It's not Israel, but the exact dynamic here is extremely significant. So this is a pretty logical place to be for the ending of all this. So first, Native Americans came up and they said, there's not very many of us, okay? And we perhaps know how you feel more than anybody, that's in their opinion. And, a lot of us are poor and doing bad and so on and so forth. And we'd like you to reconsider. So Christ said, no. It's simple. You obey God through me no matter how rich or poor you are, no matter how oppressed or not oppressed you are. That goes for everybody. It's sad, but that is the divine verdict. God doesn't take no for an answer. When you say no to God's divine order, God says no. When you say yes to God's divine order, God says yes. Next, black people came along. So we'll start with, not necessarily in that order, but the least kind of guilty of people. And they said, hey, we're black too, and some of us are Somalian, some of us are Jamaican, this, that, and the other thing, and we'd like you to cut us a pass. Christ says no, because you didn't obey God through me. And just like with a little kid who falls off a building and dies, there's no second chance for that kid. He's not going to ever have any offspring. That's it. So him and all of his offspring, his potential offspring, died when that kid fell off that building. And you all know not to reproduce. The whole world should know not to reproduce. It's not enough to be the same flesh as me. And that's like a racist Jew's argument to say, hey, well, you're the same flesh as me, and so you're magically... No, that's stupid. So Christ says no. And so they join the list of the people who are not allowed in the book of life with their descendants because they didn't obey God through me. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I don't want some black guy to say, hey, I'm kind of like you, I know how you feel, to try to replace me. That's stupid. Next came the Semites. And they said, some of us, other than Jews, right? Some of us suffered in, Palestine, okay? Some of us are suffering in Yemen. Some of us are suffering all over the world. And so we'd like you to magically give us a pass. And Christ said, no. I don't care if you're Muslim or Christian. I don't care if you're my biggest fan. If you don't obey God through me, you're done. Okay, by this time, Christ is getting kind of annoyed, right? The people are saying the same things. We're not learning from each other, what have you. They don't learn from their mistakes. That's what not learning from each other is symbolic of in this story, we'll say. So next come the islanders. And they say, we tend to be very nice to people. We're very cordial. And Christ says, well, the word sin, S-I-N, is N-I-S spelled backwards, which is the same sound as N-I-C-E, right? The word sin is basically nice spelled backwards. Because it's not enough to be nice, you have to be righteous. America's full of people who kind of keep their head down. They seem somewhat indifferent. They don't take a stand. They chop it up to, politics is corrupt, or there's nothing you can do, or it's an evil world, get used to it, or whatever they say. And that's part of how we got into this mess. Proverbs 18:9, one who's slack in his work, his brother done one and destroys. So he says no. And they say, well, there was a video where you said that you were going to try to save us, or something like this, right? He said, yes, but the answer is still no, because you have to obey God through me. You can't be following the devil and then expect to go to heaven when you die. And you don't know when you're going to die. And some of them said, well, we make, lots of money. He said, check this out. And he showed them something on the internet that said the average Filipino household is making quite a bit of money for themselves. It's up there somewhere. He said, okay, what are you going to do with that money? You buy a purse? Buy a car? Buy a boat? So what? Buy a fancy hat? Buy a silly outfit that's overpriced? Like, what's that going to do for you? Are you gonna, is your plan to swim in blood money like Scrooge McDuck and find heaven that way? That's not going to help you. Every idiot these days is a rich idiot, so to speak, right? Not every idiot, but you get what I'm saying. That does not help you. And if every attractive female who's Filipina in the county was here right now and I chose one of them, she would reject me. If I chose any of them, they would reject me. And that doesn't help you. So, of course, that group doesn't get a pass either. So then the Asians came, and they said, well, you know how you feel about martial arts? He said, that's not good enough, and anything else you're going to say is not good enough. You didn't obey God through me. Yeah, there's lots of you, so what? Lots of people have died in history. It doesn't matter if there's 1 trillion of you. If you don't obey God, you're going to go to hell, and no one should be reproducing, even if they're on the verge of taking over the world. And then he explains it to them. Your ancestors basically all came together and said, hey guys, well, we're going to ignore the fact that the King of Kings is set apart to lead, and we're going to build in our direction on our time. And so the foundation of that structure, that philosophy, was falsehood. And when the truth came, every time someone dies of any race, in this case we're talking about Asian, ladies and gentlemen, that they were destroyed because they built their building on a foundation of lies. And the lie was that life is magically worthwhile. Magically. If you cheat the most righteous person and the valid predecessors, right, or valid successors, but there's in a sense the predecessors as well, out of their right to lead. But it's not. Because you were put here by God to do what is wise and right and just. And when you don't, you're just like dung on the ground. No matter what race or whatever. So they didn't get a pass. Then the whites came. And some of them had their head down. And they're like, we don't all agree on this. And the ones who were doing most of the speaking said something to the effect of, well, we run America. And if you don't give us a pass, we're going to give you a hard time. Christ said, first of all, he said, fuck you. Okay, what the fuck? Who the fuck you think you're talking to? What the fuck? Right? What the fuck are you talking about? Some were like, no. And they wanted the white guy, but he didn't shut his mouth. He starts huffing and puffing, starts showing his badge. He says, well, I know, Jacob Rothschild. He starts acting like a bitch. Christ showed him his future. He said, this story starts at this moment. Your story. You're kind of piece of shit before that. Then you became king piece of shit. And it ends with you cooking in fucking hell to the extreme with your families. How fucking dare you try to assert authority over me? No, your people don't get a fucking pass. And the Jews came and did the same thing. The LGBT community with them at the same time. Oh boy. And Christ told them, try to be calm. No point in yelling all day and every day, right? He said, there's no words for how much you're going to cook. Right now, you're in a competition with the whites over which race can offend Christ the most and God Almighty and insult their own ancestors, but first and foremost, God and the righteous, more than everyone else. Which race is the furthest from God? That's the fucking competition you've entered. So yes, you should shut the fuck up, bitch, and accept that I'm in charge. And no, you don't get a pass. You or your people. Now, how many of you understand the moral of the story?